Chapter 23, The Digestive System, Part 1. Table of Contents. And we go into Part 1.1. The whole digestive system is made of several parts. That would be alimentary canal, accessory organs like liver, the walls of gastrointestinal tract made of 4 basic layers. That's what you need to know about anatomy of the digestive system. And then you need to know 6 digestive processes, where each of them happens and how they are regulated. That would be for physiology of the digestive system. And we are starting from the alimentary canal. Alimentary canal also is called gastrointestinal or GI tract, starts from the mouth, then it goes through esophagus to the stomach, then small intestine, large intestine, rectum, and anus. All those are parts of the alimentary canal. All other organs of the digestive system are called accessory digestive organs. In the mouth they include teeth, tongue, and salivary glands producing saliva. Then we have liver producing bile, and gallbladder for storage of that bile, and pancreas that produces a lot of digestive enzymes. All of them together are accessory digestive organs. Now, wherever we cut the tube gastrointestinal tract at the level of esophagus, stomach, small intestine, or large intestine, everywhere there will be 4 basic layers, or they are also called tunics. Mucosa, the inner layer, then submucosa, then muscle layer, Muscularis Externa, and serosa, outer layer of the connective tissue. That space inside of the tube is called lumen. Mucosa. Mucosa lines the lumen. It produces mucus, digestive enzymes, some hormones. It also works in absorption of the digested nutrients to the blood, and because it has some immune system structures, it also protects against infections. Inside of the mucosa, we have 3 sub-layers: epithelium, lamina propria, and muscularis mucosa. Epithelium is the inner layer. It lines the lumen, and it is made of simple columnar epithelium with a lot of mucus-secreting cells, goblet cells. You remember them. Goblet cells produce mucus that protects digestive organs, those walls of the digestive tube, from enzymes. So enzymes would not digest the tube itself. And also mucus makes movement of food through the digestive tube easier. In some places like stomach and small intestine, epithelium can produce enzymes and hormones. Lamina propria, right here. It's a layer made of loose areolar connective tissue. It has blood capillaries. It has some amount of lymphoid follicles to protect from infection. And it has right here a thin layer of muscularis mucosa. It's a muscle layer of smooth muscles. Next layer, submucosa. Here it is, submucosa. It's made of dense connective tissue. It contains blood vessels, arteries, veins, arteries for digestion, vein for absorption of digested food, lymphoid follicles, and also submucosal nerve plexuses for regulation. Then we have a pretty thick layer, which is made of 2 sub-layers, and that is Muscularis Externa. It's responsible for segmentation and peristalsis. Both are movements that we will discuss later, but generally just for movement of food through the tube. inner layer is circular. It means it has circular orientation of smooth muscle fibers. Then we have outer layer, which is longitudinal. That is orientation of muscle fibers. When inner circular layer contracts, it makes the tube narrow. And when outer layer contracts, it makes tube wider but shorter. Working together, they propulse food through the tube. This layer, Muscularis Externa, is controlled by mesenteric nerve plexus, nerves right inside of the muscle tissue. In some regions of the gastrointestinal tract, Muscularis Externa forms sphincters that temporarily slow down or stop movement of the food through the tube. Finally, the outer layer, called serosa, is made of visceral peritoneum. Remember that parietal layer of peritoneal membrane lines the abdominal cavity on the inside, and visceral lines surrounds the tube. In the esophagus and in some retroperitoneal parts of the gastrointestinal tract, instead of peritoneum, there will be fibrous adventitia covering the tube from the outside, which is also a layer of the connective tissue. Before you continue, please stop the video and answer the questions for Chapter 23, Part 1.1. Part 1.2, and we are starting from gastrointestinal tract regulatory mechanisms. To regulate gastrointestinal tract, our body first needs to know what's going on inside of it. For that we have receptors, mechanoreceptors and chemoreceptors. Mechanoreceptors respond to stretch, to presence of substrate. So when there is a food inside of their stomach or small intestine, that food stretches the wall, and mechanoreceptors feel that. Chemoreceptors feel changes in osmolarity, pH of the food, and also collect all that information about what's going on, if there is a food in the tube or not. And both of them, mechanoreceptors and chemoreceptors, initiate reflexes. And those reflexes, automatic responses, they can either activate digestive glands and stimulate smooth muscles to mix and move contents of lumen in case if there is food in the stomach or small intestine. Or those reflexes can inhibit glands and stop all the movement or slow it down when our stomach or small intestines are empty. Next one. There is innervation of gastrointestinal tract, intrinsic and extrinsic. Intrinsic innervation means that all those nerve endings are located in the wall of their small intestine, large intestine, stomach, and other parts of gastrointestinal tract. They are not regulated by the brain or spinal cord. They are local and they are called intrinsic. Together they are called enteric nervous system. It runs from esophagus to the anus, and it contains motor, sensory, and interneurons grouped into two plexuses that you can see in this picture. My enteric plexus is right here, and it's located in the muscularis layer. It's responsible for movement, for motility. When it's activated, muscles contract and move food through the tube. Submucosal layer is located right here, or another name for it would be plexus of Meissner or Meissner, and it regulates digestive secretions, all those glands producing mucus and different hormones into the tube. Extrinsic regulation goes from the central nervous system, from its autonomic nervous system part. And because digestion usually happens when we are relaxed, parasympathetic impulses. Remember, rest and digest, parasympathetic nervous system. So parasympathetic impulses stimulate activity inside of the digestive system. Parasympathetic, while sympathetic impulses inhibit secretion and motility. When you are under stress, your resources, your energy is needed not in your digestive system but in your heart and in your skeletal muscles and of course your brain. Next one, there are hormones that control activity of the digestive system. The main digestive hormone would be gastrin. It's produced in the stomach and it stimulates the secretion of gastric acid, hydrochloric acid, by the stomach glands. Other hormones would be secretin, cholecystokinin, and gastric inhibitory peptide, and we will talk about them a bit later. Blood supply. Arteries that supply digestive tract, main arteries, would be hepatic, going to the liver, splenic to the spleen, and left gastric. Also, there is inferior and superior mesenteric arteries. Together, they are called splanchnic circulation. There is also hepatic portal circulation. There is hepatic portal vein that starts from the stomach, small intestine, and drains blood, which is rich with nutrients. Those nutrients were absorbed from the small intestine mostly and delivers them to the liver for processing. Peritoneum and peritoneal cavity. Remember the difference between mucous membranes and serous membranes. Mucous membranes are lining the body cavities opened to the outside, like our mouth, our oral cavity, while serous membranes line body cavities that are not open to the outside. Our heart is located in the pericardium, for example. One of those serous membranes is peritoneum. Here it is. It's made of two layers. The outer layer, called parietal peritoneum, lines the body wall, while inner layer, visceral peritoneum, surrounds most of the organs inside of the abdominal cavity. Between the two layers of peritoneum, there is peritoneal cavity with some amount of fluid for lubrication. Now, next term is mesentery, a double layer of visceral inner peritoneum that surrounds small intestine parts right here, or stomach on both sides, and in some places those two layers of visceral peritoneum just get together, and between those two layers there would be blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, and nerves. That's what is called mesentery. Mesentery hold organs in place, and they are also for fat storage. Not all the organs of the abdominal cavity are covered with peritoneal membranes, and those would be called retroperitoneal. Kidneys, for example, are retroperitoneal. And those organs that are surrounded by peritoneal membrane are called intraperitoneal organs, like small intestine or stomach. Digestive processes. Everything what is going on inside of our digestive system is called digestive processes. We know 6 of them. Number 1 would be ingestion, taking of food into our mouth. That is simple, that is called ingestion. Next one, propulsion, it's movement of food. We start from swallowing, moving the food from mouth through pharynx down to esophagus, and after that, when food is moving from esophagus into the stomach, then into small intestine, large intestine, that is called peristalsis. While food is moving, it's also under mechanical and chemical digestion. Mechanical digestion, it's breaking large food particles into smaller parts. It happens, for example, in the mouth when we are chewing our food with help of our teeth, or it can happen when walls of the intestine contract and break large pieces of food into smaller ones. Chemical digestion is more fine process. It's when, with help of digestive juices, large food molecules are broken into the smaller molecules. Remember what proteins are made of. So when we are eating proteins, meat for example, large protein molecules are broken into amino acids. Carbs are broken into simple sugars. Lipids are broken into fatty acids. That is chemical digestion. Finally, when our food is broken into molecules, relatively small ones, and they can cross the walls of the small intestine and go to the blood, that is called absorption. Absorption happens from the intestine into the blood or blood vessels or to the lymphatic vessels, fats for example. Okay, and finally, defecation. Defecation is removing of all the food remnants that we did not absorb out of the body through the anus. A little bit more about digestive processes. Movement. Peristalsis, it's adjacent segments of alimentary tract organs alternately contract and relax, and that moves food along the tract distally. For example, muscles contract right here in the small intestine and move that piece of food, bolus of food down. Then right here, in turn, and that is peristalsis. But when the walls of small intestine contract and break a big bolus of food into smaller ones and mix that food with digestive enzymes, that would be called segmentation. To see how it happens, please watch the animation on peristalsis and segmentation. The link would be under the video. Before you continue, please stop the video and answer the questions for part 1.2. Here is a picture of the mouth, and it's just another name for oral or buccal cavity. So oral cavity is bounded by lips from the front, cheeks on the lateral sides, palate on the superior, and tongue on the inferior. Oral orifice, it's an opening of our mouth. And the inside of the oral cavity is lined with stratified squamous epithelium. As you remember, those would be many layers of squamous, mostly squamous cells. Lips and cheeks. Inside of our cheeks and lips there are muscles. Those are skeletal muscles, orbicularis oris and buccinator, and we can control those muscles voluntarily. That's exactly what we do when we are talking. Vestibule is a space between the teeth and lips, right here. That will be inferior vestibule, and right here between the gums and upper lip, that will be superior vestibule. And everything what is behind the teeth is called oral cavity proper. Right here you can see inferior labial frenulum and superior labial frenulum. It's attachment of each lip to the gum. The roof of our mouth is made of hard palate and soft palate. Hard palate is made of the bones. So right here we have palatine closer to the teeth. Remember, that is palatine process of the maxilla. And a little bit behind, posterior to it, there will be palatine bones. Finally, at the very end, there is a soft palate. And soft palate mostly is made of skeletal muscle. And when a doctor tells you to say, it's when you elevate a little bit your soft palate. And generally, when you are swallowing, that part of it hanging down, it's called uvula, it goes up and closes your nose. So when you swallow water, for example, that water would not go into your nasal cavity. Now, tongue. Functions of our tongue. Repositioning and mixing food during chewing. It means your tongue just moves the food between your teeth so you could chew it. Formation of the bolus. It's mixing of the food with saliva. So digestion could start, and what digestion starts in the mouth would be digestion of carbs with help of salivary amylase. We'll talk about it. And finally, our tongue helps us to start swallowing, and also we use it for speech and to taste our food. There are two types of muscles inside of the tongue. Intrinsic, they change the shape of the tongue, and extrinsic muscles, they can change the tongue position, move it left, right, up, down. One more structure you need to know about is lingual frenulum. Here it is. It attaches the inferior side of the tongue to the floor of the mouth. Some babies are born with very short lingual frenulum, and in this case, doctors have to do small incision right here, so babies could move their tongue freely. Now about sense of taste. Taste buds are all over the tongue, and they are located on papilla. We have 4 types of papilla that you need to know about. Filiform, tiny papilla. Fungiform papilla that look like kind of mushrooms. Circumvallate papilla are located right here in posterior side of the tongue, and they are large ones. And those 3 house taste buds, so they help us to taste our food. Finally, there is one more type of papilla on the sides. It's called foliate papilla. They do not have taste buds. The front part, about 2/3 of the tongue, is called body of the tongue. The back part, posterior part, is called root of the tongue. It has lingual tonsil sitting on it. And the border between those 2 parts is called terminal sulcus. Now we are going to salivary glands. We have 3 pairs of glands, salivary glands producing saliva. Parotid salivary gland is the largest one, and it is sitting right next to the ear. The ear would be right here. And that is parotid duct. All the ducts of all the salivary glands are open into the mouth, into the oral cavity. Next one, we have submandibular salivary glands, left and right, and sublingual salivary glands that are located right under the tongue. Main function of the salivary glands, of course, is production of saliva. And functions of saliva would be it cleanses the mouth, moistens and dissolves food chemicals, and aids in bolus formation. It means before we can even swallow our food, it should be chewed and mixed with saliva. Otherwise, we won't be able to swallow it. Also, saliva has enzymes that begin the breakdown of starch, type of carbs. So saliva, 97 to 99% of it is water, and it is very slightly acidic. It has electrolytes like sodium, potassium, and others, and it contains salivary amylase. That's important to remember. That is enzyme that starts breakdown of starches, carbs. Next one, mucin. Also, small amount of metabolic wastes like urea and uric acid, and we have chemicals that protect against pathogens, bacteria and viruses. Those would be lysozyme, immunoglobulin A, and defensin proteins. Before you continue, please stop the video and answer the questions for Chapter 23, Part 1.3. Now let's talk about teeth. 20 deciduous teeth show up usually in babies and toddlers starting from 6 and ending by 2 years of age. And another name for deciduous teeth are temporary teeth. So they don't stay until the end of life. They usually fall out by 12 years old, and they are replaced by permanent teeth. And adult humans usually have 32 permanent teeth. Look at this X-ray of the oral cavity. Right here you can see temporary or deciduous teeth, and permanent teeth are ready to replace them. They already sitting right here. They were created at the same time, and they are just hidden inside of the oral cavity in their maxilla and mandible. There are four main types of teeth. So incisors, those front 4 teeth right here, they are for cutting. Canines for tearing or piercing food. Here they are, canines. Each of those teeth has only one root. Then we have premolars, first premolar, second premolar. And each of those has 2 roots. Finally, molars have 3 roots each. Those are the largest teeth, and they are for grinding or crushing food. A dental formula. When your dentist examines your oral cavity and makes records, he gives numbers to all the teeth, and he starts counting from upper right. If you go to your upper jaw, maxilla, and start from the right side and start counting your teeth from upper right to upper left, those would be numbers 1 through 16. Then if you go down to your lower left and start moving through the lower teeth all the way to the lower right of your mandible, those teeth will have numbers 17 through 32. Of course, in case if you have all your teeth, including those wisdom teeth. So number 1, 16, 17, and 32, those will be wisdom teeth. Let's talk about tooth structure. That visible part, the white one, is a crown, and the crown is covered by enamel. Enamel is the hardest substance in the human body. It's even stronger than bones. Mostly it's made of calcium salts and hydroxyapatite crystals. That part that you cannot see inside of the gums is called root. So some teeth have 1 root, some 2, and molars have 3 roots. And between crown and root, that place where a tooth enters the gums, that is called neck of the tooth. Right under their enamel, there is a dentin, and that dentin is made of cementum, calcified connective tissue. And it's pretty strong, but it's not as strong as enamel. And dentin actually connects the tooth to the gums, to the joint, forming joint with maxilla and mandibules. Those joint types are called gomphoses, and they are fibrous joints because those fibers, right here they are called periodontal ligaments, and they are made out of strong collagen fibers. Between periodontal ligaments, in those spaces right here, there will be cementum, calcified connective tissues. So both periodontal ligaments and cementum attach the tooth to their upper or lower jaw and makes it really hard to extract a healthy tooth. So dentin, bone-like material, is maintained by cells called odontoblasts. And odontoblasts are located in the very center, which is called pulp cavity. That pulp cavity contains connective tissue and also blood vessels, arteries and veins, and nerves. Both arteries and veins enter right here, and that would be a root canal of the tooth. Let's talk about tooth and gum disease. The most common problem with teeth would be dental caries or formation of cavities in the teeth. It happens because of gradual demineralization of enamel and dentin. So minerals like calcium are removed out of the tooth. What causes dental plaque? So consuming a lot of sugar causes bacteria to feed on that sugar, and different types of debris just sticks to the teeth and causes those bacteria producing acid, and that acid dissolves calcium salt. It's not always due to the fact that you don't care well about your teeth. Some people are genetically more predisposed to have caries than other people. Some people just have better enamel because they were born with that better enamel type. Next one, when acid destroys calcium, removes calcium, proteolytic enzymes produced by the same bacteria digest organic matter, fibers. And finally, destruction of the tooth happens from the enamel. When there is just small cavity in the enamel, you don't feel any pain yet because nerves are sitting deep here in the pulp cavity. When it goes through the dentin close to pulp cavity, here you can start feeling pain, but usually only when you consume too cold or too hot food. And finally, when infection caries goes all the way to the pulp cavity, that's where a pain, inflammation starts, and it can cause even infection in underlying tissues of the tooth, abscess right here. Well, the best prevention still is daily flossing, brushing, and cleaning your teeth on schedule. Next problem that can happen with teeth is gingivitis. Mostly it's not teeth themselves, it's inflammation of gums, gingiva. And plaques that are formed on the teeth, they form tartar, and it disrupts the seal between their gums and the teeth. Bacteria cause infections, and if that calculus is removed, usually that infection is reversible. Here are digestive functions of the mouth, and you have that table in your book. It's table 23.4, and you're supposed to know function for each of the structures in the oral cavity. Now let's summarize digestive functions of the mouth. What happens in the mouth? First of all, ingestion, or taking food into the mouth. Next one, digestion. Mechanical digestion would be chewing. Another name for it is mastication. So mastication and chewing is same thing. So partial mastication is voluntary, partially it's a reflex. Finally, chemical digestion. Salivary amylase starts breaking carbs into smaller molecules. There is also a very small amount of lingual lipase, an enzyme that is supposed to break fats, but because there is such a minimal amount of it, we usually, when we're talking about chemical digestion in the mouth, we mention mostly salivary amylase for carbs, and that's what I expect you to know. Finally, propulsion, or moving the food from the mouth all the way to the pharynx and esophagus, and we always call that process swallowing. Another name for it would be deglutition. Okay, please remember to answer the questions for Chapter 23, Part 1.4.